Hey, what's up, team? Brandon here from Go HQ. Changing things up a little bit today. So I sent out a survey a couple days ago regarding a new launch of a new online program that I've been working on. And one of the questions in this survey was, if you could ask me 2 questions, what would they be? So I figured I would just do a long form discussion here and kind of read through a bunch of these. There are a few redundancies in here, which you would expect. I've only glanced through these once, and there are new questions in here that I see that I haven't looked at yet. So this is not pre-scripted or anything like that. So I figured I would read some of these off, answer in as short of a form as I possibly can, and I don't know, post this video on YouTube and see if it catches any views, which I doubt it will. So let's get started. And I'm going to keep this anonymous as far as who asked what. We're just going to rifle through these as best that I can. So without further ado, and I'm going to skim things that are just more like comments, not really direct questions. Okay, what measures will be employed at your facility to reduce spread and safeguard clients against COVID-19 once you've reopened? These include measures your gym will take, as well as what will you require of your clients. Okay, awesome question. Super relevant to today's times. We're going to be doing crazy amounts of cleaning, of course. You know, I think we hold a pretty high standard in that regard anyway with our antiseptic towelettes, and we require everyone wipe down their gear after use. I'm going to be probably taping out 6-foot distancing on the floor like you're seeing at all the stores these days. We're going to ask that everyone wash their hands upon entering and upon exiting the facility, and make sure that you wipe down everything that you come in contact with. Also minimize the contact for equipment. So instead of going against the cage and just leaning on the cage when you don't need to be using it, we need to just not lean on the cage. Anytime people do floor exercises, we're going to require that you guys use puzzle mats so that you aren't coming in direct contact with the floor. Just minimize contact with both items and, of course, each other. Our class times are going to be shortened a little bit to probably 50 minutes, so that, let's say, the 8 a.m. class can leave at 8:50, so that a 9 a.m. class or sessions or whatever can come into basically an empty facility. So we want to minimize that crossover time. Open gym time is not going to be allowed, so you're either training with a trainer or a coach of some kind at a class. So things like that. I have defoggers that we're going to be using on a regular basis. That's definitely a step above. That's something we normally don't do. All that good stuff. So, how to build wind strength, I'm assuming that means cardio, while taking prescribed drugs that fight it. Band-aid routines beyond crossover routines. Slightly vague. So, if you're on prescribed drugs that are fighting like an elevated heart rate, so we're kind of getting into some medical stuff here, beta blockers and such. This just comes down to long-term consistency. So the drugs you're obviously stuck between a rock and a hard place there, but this is just long-term consistency of working on your wind, steady state cardio combined with some interval training. Now the interval training is a little tricky because you're really going to suffer there to hit high heart rate zones. So that's maybe against doctor's orders. So that's a specific scenario there. But I would really boil that down to just long-term consistency. Now, another way of looking at this would also be efficiency, right? So the stronger that we are in terms of muscle mass, so let's say we're riding the air bike, the stronger our legs are to pedal that thing, the lower our heart rate needs to be to go at a certain RPM. So developing strength is actually a great way to find efficiency in your cardio, if that makes sense. So not sure I answered that all that well. What aren't you good at, and how is Gunner? We do not have time to go through a list of all the things I am not good at. I have always considered myself kind of a jack of all trades and a master of none. But there are a million things that I still have to learn. I am terrible at having a social life and being a workaholic. And again, that's a really long list. And how is Gunner? Unfortunately, Gunner is no longer with us. He passed a while back. And that's just not something I went public with. So I'm sorry to reveal that on this platform. I miss him. How have you been? How is COVID-19 going to affect the way you do biz? I've been great. I feel like I adapt really well. So as far as this COVID-19 thing goes, I did my homework before the executive orders came down for us to close anyway. Felt like I was really prepared to take the business online, and I'm really pleased with how it's going. I've gotten overall like tremendous support from all the members here. I am pumped that not everyone, most of our athletes are doing great during the at-home workouts, and just super pumped on how things are going, all things considered. So I feel blessed in that sense. So all good. Okay. I'm not going to say that question out loud, nor the follow-up question. You can probably guess who you are. When are we going to do overhead snatches and cleans? Okay, so the day that I'm filming this, actually, we have power cleans in the workout. Today's workout is the Chief, which has 3 power cleans in it at a time, and then overhead snatches, that's a redundant term, so snatches are overhead. That is on, I have those programmed this week anyway, so I have dumbbell snatches programmed with overhead squats with a single dumbbell later this week, so depending on when I release this, could be today. What is your favorite thing about being a coach? What is your least favorite thing about being a coach? Ooh, how much do I want to reveal here to my watching members? My favorite thing about being a coach is just seeing people make progress that they're wanting to make, right? The result. I mean, what I sell in a sales approach is not gym memberships, right? I'm trying to sell a result to my client, to my athletes. They're wanting to lose 10 pounds and be able to do a pull-up. That's what I'm trying to offer you. So when those things come to fruition, I mean, that's got to be my favorite part about being a coach, is just seeing people have like breakthroughs and reach their result. I mean, honestly, when I think of certain moments, like it gets me all emotional and I start wanting to cry a little bit, as cheesy as that sounds. And there are a bunch of little moments that maybe aren't in terms of like the big end result, but just all those little stepping stones along the way are huge. If somebody's scared of jumping on a 20-inch box for the first time and it just scares the freaking daylights out of them, and they try a million times and they never get their feet off the ground, and then finally it happens for the first time. I mean, that's a big exciting moment, right? So things like that. What are my least favorite things about being a coach? Oh man, also a long, long list. This is, I think, a harder job than most people realize. Maybe you come in and you see that like, oh, you're just hanging out in the gym all day and just working out with people. And yeah, that's kind of true, but not everyone likes this process. So for the clients and athletes that aren't a big fan of fitness, they feel that this is something they have to do. It's not something that they necessarily want to do, and they aren't intrinsically motivated all that much. You feel like you're always pulling it out of them, and they maybe don't want to push that hard, and they don't like intensity, and maybe they have a lot of myths in their head that they just can't get around. So all of those types of things add up a lot. So those all as a whole, it's not a clear answer, I guess, but all of those types of things are my least favorite, is trying to like force somebody through this process. That's never fun. And it's not only not fun for the coach, it's also not fun for the athlete, right? Because they just don't want to be here. So those are the kind of relationships that tend to fizzle out anyway. How do you stay motivated? Is eating healthy a struggle for you? Yes, eating healthy is a struggle for me. I love sugar. So when you bring me cookies, I eat them. That's the problem. That's why I don't want you to bring me cookies, because I'm going to hammer those down. I'm not like a fat person or a salty person. I'm a sugar person. So like ice cream and cookies and just freaking M&Ms, I can hammer that stuff down. That being said, is eating healthy a struggle? No, I've been doing this a long, long time. So like when we did the RP challenge, for instance, I rolled into that, and that was like just me flipping a switch on, boom, and away we went. I didn't struggle with that at all. That's partly just my wiring, I think, that when I've been challenged to do something and I've made it clear that I'm embracing that challenge, there's not really any turning back for me in my mind. So I use that stubbornness to my advantage. So I hate the process of cooking, I guess. I don't care to live in the kitchen. I don't care to clean dishes. So as far as, vegetable intake and stuff, I can do better there. If I hit the jackpot tomorrow, one of the things I would absolutely do is hire a chef to make my meals for me, so that all I had to do is eat perfectly all the time. And I would even tell them what to make, right? The harder question is, how do I stay motivated? I don't know that I have a clear answer for that. There's so many things coming into that. So first of all, I'm wired slightly robotically in many ways. I tend to turn the emotion off on a lot of things, and I've always been competitive since I was super young. I had an older brother, and for any of you that have older siblings, you probably know what it's like to try to keep up with that older sibling. And so that's you're playing up a league all the time. And so that's been my entire life. I've always felt like I was an underdog in some capacity. And so that is a strong motivator to me, is to kind of prove that I can hang somehow. I think I'm just wired for challenges and competitions. I'm very stubborn. So again, I use that to my advantage here. But also, like, being surrounded by the right people, I think, is huge. And who am I surrounded by? Well, all of you guys, all of these athletes and clients and members that are working out all the time. So I'm in a room with barbells and dumbbells and kettlebells all day long. So everything is a motivator of sorts. When you watch somebody hit a workout and they do it, at a certain time, and can you beat that time by 5 seconds, just to send them that text later, that kind of stuff. So there's constant sources of motivation around you all the time. You just have to know to look for them, and then also embrace that and not reject it. But then also, and one thing I actually sent out in today's email is, know your why. So why are you working out? Why do you train? Is it just to stay healthy? It's kind of a generic answer. Is it because you have a competition coming up? Is it, what is it that drives you? So I think knowing your levels of why are super important. So like, how deep can you go there with that intrinsic motivation? Going back to the question earlier about what I don't like being a coach, is trying to motivate people is incredibly hard if they don't have their own intrinsic motivation. If they're relying on extrinsic motivators, they're never truly motivated. That's not motivation. That's something buying you 30 seconds worth of motivation that is fleeting and is gone after the 30 seconds. So anyway, intrinsic motivation is huge. And I guess I'm strongly intrinsically motivated towards fitness and exercise and performance and movement and an active lifestyle. Sorry, that was a really long answer. I suck at this. How long have you been in business here in St. Augustine, including Let's Go Stand Up? A long time. I know. What do you think is the main reason for your success? So I've been in business in St. Augustine since 2003. I started personal training January 2003 and off to the races. And I was working in kind of the local facilities here just as an independent contractor. I built up a clientele to pretty much a max level very, very quickly. I was very fortunate in that sense. And I've just been going ever since. Obviously, that capacity didn't allow me to expand, so I had to evolve into getting my own space, which allowed me to hire more trainers, which you guys know, and just continue doing the type of training that I wanted to do. Nobody in town was doing this type of training. When I started Fit Camp, which was in 2007, so needed my own space. Let's Go Stand Up started somewhere kind of in the middle of all that stuff. Nobody was doing paddleboarding in town. I went to a paddleboarding demo, loved it, and immediately bought a board, but then other people wanted to go. So I ended up saying, screw it, let's buy a trailer, let's buy a fleet of boards, and then started giving lessons and tours on stand-up paddleboarding. So that's been super fun as well. Again, just active lifestyle, right? What is the main reason for your success? Oh, I don't know, a million things, but stubbornness probably. Me, hard work ethic, just grinding it out. I've not married, I don't have kids, so all I do is work. So a little bit of a workaholic, I think, helps with success there. All right, next page. Ooh, I'm moving too slow to get through all these. I can feel it. So much of the population in our area is over 55. Would you also consider doing an online thing for seniors? Yeah, supply and demand. If there's, absolutely. I mean, whoever needs it, right? I mean, our class here, Prime Time, is a perfect example of that. Like there's a need, so see a need, fill a need. The trick with 55 and over is the tech, right? Many folks over 55 just aren't living on a computer. So getting that sort of program to them is a little bit tricky because they don't see things like social media ads. That's just not it's tricky to get to them. But if there was a method there, absolutely. I mean, that'd be an easy thing to deliver, in my opinion. What is the most important body area to strengthen if you had to pick one? Definitely biceps. I mean, right? What else do you need? Body area. I mean, I guess I would say core, because that's such a generic answer. But everything can be traced back to the core somehow. We do so many core, what we call core to extremity movements. So if I do a push press, I dip, drive, press, right? That drive energy is coming from the core, and then it transfers outward. So that applies to a million exercises that I can think of. So, and when somebody's lacking like foundational core strength or mobility, they suffer almost everywhere else for it. So, you know, generically, I would say core strength. What are good stretches for a sore lower back? If it's sore, that's an acute question, right? If it's acutely sore, that can be tricky because your mobility might be limited while it's sore, so you might need to let it dissipate. But while it's sore, I would say gentle knee hugs and child's pose would be probably my top two. And then I actually shot a video about wall mobility. That would be a really good routine, because that entire routine has your back flat to the floor. So that wall routine might be a phenomenal one to do while your back is acutely sore. What are the best ways to avoid injury while working out, and what's the best way to train to develop increased overall full body strength? How do we avoid injuries while working out? That's a long answer. I mean, normal stuff, right? Properly warm up, always use good technique, and stay within your technique limits. If you're pushing too hard, that's where the magic is, right? Is where our technique is getting maxed out, but not so far that it's broken down completely. So if we're doing a heavy deadlift and we are just barely, we're 5% out of position, and we can pull it and we get it done. But if we go 10% or 15% out of position as far as like a neutral spine, you know, where is that breaking point for injury? It's a little unclear for everybody depending on the day. So yes, yeah, proper warm-ups, body awareness, always use good technique. And these things are developed long over time too. Like, so you'll get to learn your body. Like, you might realize that you need a little more low back warm-up before you deadlift versus what is programmed that day. So learning that and applying that to your own routine is helpful too. What's the best way to train to develop increased overall full body strength? Long-term consistency is my number one answer. I mean, we're assuming that there's a variety of programming there, that you're doing a well-rounded routine. You're pushing, you're pulling, you have upper body, you have lower body, you have core demands, and you're doing what we call progressive overload over a long period of time. So you don't just come out gangbusters the first 6 weeks and try to, you know, become Superman. So overall body strength, all sorts of stuff there. What is your biggest fitness challenge? How did you choose a life of health and fitness? So my biggest fitness challenge, I don't know. I've done a couple of hard things. I mean, I've competed in many facets of sports. I don't know if that's where this is going. I've competed in many things, right? So I played soccer and volleyball and all sorts of stuff growing up. I played most sports growing up in South Florida. I've done bodybuilding, triathlons, competitive jiu-jitsu. I've done MMA. I've done CrossFit. I've done all sorts of stuff. So I think bodybuilding was tough because it was so lifestyle dependent. I mean, you had to be on your food all the time. And so that's a tricky one. The triathlon was tricky because it was so time investment heavy. You had to be just in the pool, on the bike, or on the road all the time. I mean, it was hours and hours and hours every day. It's not like you could just go do an hour workout and be done, because you'd never get the mileage in. So triathlons was hard in that way. CrossFit was really hard because it's similar to the time thing. There's just so many skills to develop, and the intensity is really high. So started feeling a little beat up with that. Same with like martial arts stuff. You felt a little beat up, but I really enjoyed that. Paddleboard racing is another thing I competed in, and that was super fun. Also time investment heavy. So I don't know what the hardest is though. I mean, I could find really hard moments in all of it. thrusters is what it boils down to. I hate thrusters. How did you choose a life of health and fitness? I didn't. It chose me. I've been in it my whole life. I grew up, thank God, in a household where my dad in particular encouraged sport, encouraged movement, encouraged challenging things. And it was like, oh, you failed. You didn't do it. Go try again. Get back on the bike. Sorry, you just wiped out off that ramp and, tore yourself up. Okay. So do it until you can stick the landing. And I'm thankful for that. And then my older brother too was like monumental, not on purpose. He just happened to be my older brother, but I'll be damned if he's going to beat me at anything. What's next? How do I get stronger and better at endurance? What are different ways I can incorporate active recovery movement? Blah, blah, blah. Meant to repair and stretch is not yoga and interesting. Okay, kind of a long question. I'm going to go with, so how to get stronger and better at endurance. Again, we talked about that a little bit earlier. Just long-term consistency. You've got to put in the reps. You've got to put in the hours. There's no fast track to any of this stuff unless you want to go to the drugs. There's just no fast formula. The better your nutrition is, the better your sleep is, and the better you stick to your training regimen, the faster your success will come. But you can only accelerate it so fast anyway. So just do the best you can to stick to the plan, have a really high level of adherence to that, and give it time. So patience, not one of my strong suits either. What are different ways I can incorporate active recovery movement? That's a long one. So your recovery methods can't be rushed either. I mean, are you stretching? Are you foam rolling? Are you doing some form of myofascial release with a lacrosse ball or a foam roller? Are you aware of what your ailments are? What things feel like they are struggling? If you're doing a lot of running, are your calves bothering you? Are, your hamstrings starting to become problematic? And so keying in, I think, to how you want to do active recovery. So that's become a little bit of a buzzword these days. And some people will hit the weights really hard and do Metcons 5 days a week. And then their active recovery is a 13-mile run. That's not active recovery. So, it's important to take actual rest days and really give your body time to heal and also recharge on a neurological level and from a nutrition deficit level. So, we're always exchanging fuel, right? We take fuel in and we burn it and we repeat that process. So your body will recharge on some of the fuel as well on those off days. So true off days are important. Stretching is one thing, but doing a 90-minute yoga class is another, right? So now you're expending all sorts of energies and stress. So yeah, pick your poison there. I could maybe answer that more specifically if we're talking about certain activities and body parts. How often are the emails? What are the obligations? I don't know what that's referring to. Maybe the online program. So I'm going to skip that one. Why do you ever play the Sally song? It should be banished from the earth. So we're talking about Bring Sally Up here, I'm assuming. So good point. Agreed. I think you've got some fans. What is the best way to start working out again? I'm not good at working out alone. What motivation tips do you recommend? So the best way to start working out again, I would almost start with the why, which I talked about earlier. Find your why. Why are you going to start working out? And from that question, it sounds like there have been multiple attempts of I work out and then I don't. I work out and then I don't. So the follow-up question, of course, is motivation. So those two things are interlinked. You've got to find some sort of intrinsic motivator to be a constant. So any day that you are struggling and you don't want to do it, and it's okay to have those days, guys. It's okay to really not be feeling it one day and just say, screw it, I'm not working out. That's okay too. You don't have to be a total robot about this process. No one's expecting that. But you need some sort of foundational root for why you're doing something. So you have a job. Why do you have a job? Is it because you like the job, or is it because you need to make money? Okay, you need to make money. Well, why do you need to make money? Because you need a roof over your head and you need food in your stomach, right? Yeah, so there's an exchange going on there. So at the end of the day, you have a job because you need to eat, not because you need to make money. So the deeper we keep taking that, the deeper the intrinsic meaning. So I would find your why. And then my motivation tips are surround yourself with people that live the same lifestyle and have similar goals. So if you're surrounded by people if your spouse, if all your friends, if all of your family, if none of them do any exercise ever, and you are the freak now in the group, you're the oddball that is out in the garage, riding the bike and doing deadlifts 5 days a week, you're going to feel like the odd man out. And now you've got this like reverse peer pressure to quit doing that, just because they're always like, why are you doing that? That doesn't make sense. Why are you doing that? We should go to the park today instead of you doing that, or whatever. So finding a support group is huge for motivation, but really nobody can motivate you endlessly. It just doesn't work that way. You've got to have that figured out on your own. Extrinsic motivators suck. They aren't even close to as valuable. I have osteoarthritis. Specifically, what exercises do I need to do to reduce pain? So this will go pretty deep. So osteoarthritis, we need to continue to exercise. So we're dealing with like supply and demand curves here. Just like our muscles, our bones need overload in order to spark growth. Or we could also talk about that as reducing the decline rate, right? So if our bone density is decreasing, we can reduce that rate of decline. So resistance training, impact training is what's going to do that, right? In the form of progressive overload, of course. So maybe you don't want impacts, but you definitely need resistance, because as our muscles have to pull really hard, guess what our muscles attach to? The bones. And that is a source of kind of demand on the bones as well. So lifting weights is super key here. So what specific exercises you need, that should be a very thorough exercise program. Like we said earlier, we're pushing, we're pulling, upper body, lower body, a variety of movements to encourage full ranges of motion everywhere, and also address all of the bones of the body, not just a key set of bones. Maybe you were diagnosed with hips or something, and so maybe you're thinking you want more lower body exercises, which is fine, but I would address the whole body as a whole anyway. And then the follow-up question is best diet to prevent inflammation. So the common things here are going to be like acidic type foods. So we could address this as like a pH level conversation. You could also maybe look at just the sugar content of a food, the makeup of the food. So are they ingredients that you can pronounce? Are they things you've never heard of? So typically the more nonsense that's in a food, the worse it's going to be for inflammation. Obviously then there are specific issues. Do you have gluten allergens or dairy allergens where those things are going to maybe upset some things? So that's going to be an individual thing. But anytime you can eat more vegetables, lean proteins, very, very little to no sugar, get rid of the starchy nonsense, empty calorie foods, alcohol, all those things are going to add up. It's the same nutrition information all the time for almost every question. People just don't want to apply it. The best way to alleviate lower back and shoulder pain, that's a really vague question. So get stronger would be my answer. Strengthen as much muscle tissue as you possibly can in a safe and progressive way. Again, that's the sort of thing that doesn't happen overnight. There's no magic one exercise. There's an all-encompassing routine going on here. So, get better at your movement patterns, know what bothers you, stay away from the things that bother you maybe for a while, and then ease them back into the system long term. How do you get your abs, and why did you get more ripped off of RP? I didn't do anything off of RP, but stick to the plan. So like I said, once the RP challenge started, I stuck to that like glue, and I just didn't deviate. I said, I'm going to go 100% to prove a point here. My exercise routine didn't change at all. And burn that fat, baby. So how do you get abs? You don't. I mean, it's as cliche as it is. Abs are made in the kitchen. Abs are not about what exercises you choose. Abs come from having the muscular development in that department, but mainly the low enough body fat on top of your abs to actually show that development. So you could have the strongest core in the world by quantifying it by who can do the most crunches in an hour or whatever. That doesn't matter at all. If you've got a layer of fat on top of it, you're never going to see those abs. So this is all about being as lean as you can to show the abs. So like I don't know who this question is from, but for the guys, you're probably not going to have even a remotely visible six-pack if you have double-digit body fat. I mean, if you've got 10% body fat, you probably barely see the outline of any six-pack. So guys, you need to get sub 10% to start having anything respectable there. Okay, that's not a question. Not a question. Would you do a group challenge with eating programs on a more regular basis? Would you consider doing 1 or 2 times per month of a fun functional day out of the gym, such as group hikes, group wall climb, etc.? Yeah, that's stuff yes, I think about that stuff all the time. The trick is, many things over my experience with this is that you come out gangbusters on some of this stuff. So let's say we do hey, first Saturday of every month, we're going to meet up at the Edge Rock Gym and we're going to go rock climbing as a group. And everybody shows up to that first one. But then the second one, half of that number show up. And then the third one, half of that number show up. And it just fizzles out. So people start out gangbusters on things because of the novelty of the new experience, but then there's just not much staying power. And then the problem is that at the end of the day, I've maybe sacrificed like a Saturday fit camp, for instance, which is local, everyone, it's predictable, it's close, there's no extra steps to show up to do the class. And now all of a sudden there's some extra steps to meet somewhere else, and there's extra information and extra things to prepare. And those are barriers of entry. And those barriers of entry keep people from doing it. So part of my gig is trying to make all of this as easy as humanly possible to get people in the door to achieve their results. So like the way we're doing the online format right now, you wake up, you check your email, boom, click the link, there's the video. It's also in Wodify. We've got that redundancy. I loaned you guys the equipment as much as I could, and I'm trying to make it as easy as possible so there aren't just a bunch of excuses like, oh, I don't have this, oh, I didn't have that, oh, I didn't know what that move was. Bullshit. It's all spelled out. So I would love to do all of that stuff, right? I love hiking, I love climbing, I have all sorts of ideas for that, and I just don't want to leave people hanging, I guess. As far as the group challenges with eating, yeah, I mean, I would love to do that, and I hope to do another RP challenge here coming up soon once everything gets back to normal. So most people that did that really, really loved it. I mean, overall, that was such a successful challenge. The adherence was phenomenal for most of the people that partook, and the results were there at the end. So that's awesome. So yeah, we need to get on that. You can only do that so much, just because there should be maintenance phases built in, not just living on a cut permanently, right? Can you do a 30-minute workout? Yeah, of course. 30 minutes is, I mean, Fran only takes a couple of minutes. That'll kill you. Can you develop a specific spot area workout that would be like 3 to 4 weeks long? No. So I'm assuming that's referring to spot reducing. So this means, oh, I want to get rid of the fat right here in my belly. So what exercises do I do for that? That's not how that works. So that's called spot reducing. And that's not a thing. They test that all day long in the labs, and you basically can't spot reduce. So if you have a beer belly and you do 10,000 sit-ups a day, you do more sit-ups than any other human ever, you're still going to have a beer belly at the end of the day. Anytime you're trying to reduce fat, that basically comes down to nutrition, because calories in, calories out, you've got to be in that reduced calorie state. So, I mean, I could design a program that is all about abs and butt, sure, but it doesn't help the fat in those areas. So I refuse to sell something like that, because that's not the result you're going to get, and therefore I'm selling a myth. And that's actually what the majority of the fitness industry does, right? Every commercial you've ever seen for every product pitches that exact thing, but that is a complete lie, and it drives me nuts. And those people should be shot, because they're lying. What are you searching for? Why aren't you going for it? Yeah, we're not going to go into that. That just hit me in my soul. Okay, moving on. I feel like I'm flushed after that question, actually. What is the best low-impact move that you can give for a short amount of time? What is the safest way to lift weights without a spotter? I don't understand the first question. Best low-impact move gives more for... I mean, are we literally talking low impact in a sense of like actual impacts? I'm not sure. I mean... the highest calorie burning things we can do, like with a barbell, is going to be something like thrusters or squat cleans. I mean, just crazy amounts of movement. My mind is going towards like scientific definitions here of work, right? So like force times distance. So the more we're moving something distance wise, the more work it is by definition. So things with large ranges of motion are going to give you a lot of bang for your buck. What is the safest way to lift weights without a spotter? Well, you only really need a spotter on a couple things, in my opinion, like bench press probably being number one, because you've got a weight floating above you that could somehow come down on you, on your neck or on your head or something. So anything you can get stuck under. You don't need a spotter for 99.9% of the other exercises in the world. I mean, maybe a back squat, and that's about it. I mean, those are really the only two moves we should be spotting for the most part. I mean, we could get into variations of those moves, right? Like dumbbell bench press or incline bench press, but otherwise you should be lifting within your limits. Like I bench press a lot on my own, but I purposefully don't go near my max because I know I'm going to end up stuck under a bar one day. How do you stay motivated, exercise, and eat well? We went over this one. What exercises are most efficient for giving you the best workout in the shortest amount of time? Okay, so that's almost what we just talked about, right? What's going to burn the most calories? I mean, high calorie burning moves like jump rope, burpees, like these conditioning things are super good for calorie burn. Now, is jump rope going to build you a muscular physique? No. Then we need things like resistance, right? So again, we're back to movements that cause a big range of motion. So a squat is far better than like a leg extension machine, because it's just that it's a lot harder and it's hitting more muscles. So that's kind of how I program our routines here, is trying to give you the most bang for the buck for your time. So squats, deadlifts, bench. I mean, those three kind of phases, I would also throw in like a pulling move, like pull-ups or something. If you can really master those basics, you're going to be rocking. I mean, there are people that do very few exercises in terms of variety. I mean, very, very few, and have phenomenal physiques and can perform phenomenally well because they've really mastered those basics. And if you can do those basics, that should transfer to so many other things that you barely need to think about. What are your top 3 tips for lifelong fitness and strength? What are some recommendations for long-term accountability in one's fitness and nutrition? Okay, so keyword here, lifelong, right? Lifelong fitness and strength. I mean, consistency. Having consistency in your routines, whatever those routines are. I would say support group would be another tip. So we talked about that earlier, having people around you that share the same goals and visions, because you can A, do the moves with them, you can go through that lifestyle with them, and then B, they're not like naysayers in your life, right? Like just Debbie Downers that don't do it, so therefore they don't get it, therefore they're always trying to talk you out of it. And then what would be my third tip? I don't know, man. And again, back to your why. What's your individual intrinsic motivation? So it's amazing how many times we've come back to that in this chat. Long-term accountability in one's own fitness and nutrition. I mean, goals and standards, right? So if I'm wearing a 30-inch waist size jeans, and all of a sudden those 30s are coming too tight, I've got 2 options at this point. Number 1, I can go buy 32-inch waist jeans. Number 2, I can tighten up until those 30s fit properly again. So where is my standard? I've always wondered, right? How does somebody become 650 pounds? Like at what point, at what day did they say, yeah, screw it, I'm just going to keep going with this and order, some extra fried chicken? Well, I don't know where the end is. So like I kind of have my personal cutoffs. Like if I was to ever reach 200 pounds, like my frame's just never going to get that big muscle-wise. So if I get to 200 pounds, it's because I'm getting fat. So if I ever hit 200 pounds, I've gone way too far. Even if I'm doing like a strength, build phase. And if I'm ever into, I might go with the 32-inch jeans for certain reasons. But if I ever got to like a 34-inch waist, for me, like I've gone too far. I've exceeded my standards, so I need to tighten up. So little things like that for accountability, I think, go pretty far. How do you stay motivated when it comes to diet? Is there a best time of day to work out? Motivated for diet, you could be motivated for diet on a number of reasons. One, aesthetics, how you look. I mean, are your abs visible? For the guys, is your chest bigger than your stomach? Hopefully. How do you look in the bikini, ladies? How do you look in the dress? Whatever it is. So there's the aesthetics, but then there's also the performance. What are you training for? Do you have a 5K or a half marathon coming up? Because if you're carrying 5 extra pounds of body fat, that is going to affect your goal time significantly. And there are charts you can actually look up. If you lose 5 pounds, how does that affect your 5K pace time? Just by losing weight, not by getting more fit. So performance is huge. So like I feel when I'm lighter, I'm obviously going to perform better at the body weight movements, right? So that's a strong motivator. Is there a best time of day to work out? No. Whatever you can stick with schedule-wise for the long haul, right? So consistency. If you're forcing a time and your schedule doesn't organically allow that time, how long is that going to last? And you're constantly going to be maybe frustrated with it. Now, that being said, you've got to do the best that you can with what you've got, right? But we could get into some specifics here scientifically. Like, for instance, our testosterone levels are highest first thing in the morning for the fellas. But does that mean, guys, you've got to get up at 5 a.m. and do your workout because your testosterone is highest at that moment? Hell no. That's not really what that boils down to. As long as you're doing it consistently, the supply and demand will overwhelm the timing. And of course, there's nutrient timing that goes with your workouts and stuff as well, like you guys that did RP realized, right? How do you improve mobility and strength for wall-facing squats and overhead squats? Okay, specific question. A lot to unpack there depending on who you are. Is it your hips? Is it your ankles? Is it your shoulder mobility? So, your wall-facing squat has that backside strength as well. Like, how tight can your extensors of your spine lock down? So I guess there are many, many options to answer that. It depends on what your limiter is. So, and we would really want to attack those limiters first and kind of skip over where you're already good, right? We don't need to spend much time on the things you've already got. We need to fix the weaknesses. So, do we need to hang out in lizard? Do we need more hip flexor stretch time? Is it just the overhead? Maybe your squat is great and we just need more shoulder stretching, So I guess I can't cover all those bases here in this format. Why did you only shoot 1 turkey this season? That's a good question. So I actually shot 2 turkeys this season, which is the limit. So I shot 1 at my dad's property and then 1 here at the local hunting club as well. So I did reach my limit. Great question. That's my favorite so far. That's a repetitive question. How can I get rid of my belly and still eat cheese and drink beer? I still work out at least 4 to 5 days per week. Okay, so this question makes me laugh, but I also want to actually answer this. So how can I get rid of my belly and still eat cheese and drink beer? So I think it was a Harvard professor somewhere, and I think he taught nutrition or something, or maybe exercise physiology, something in this category. And to prove a point, he went on a reduced calorie diet. I think he went down to like 1,800 calories or something for 10 weeks. I don't know the numbers. Don't quote me on that. But he did this to just prove a point to his students that he could basically eat a bunch of bullcrap food. So in this case, it would be cheese and drink beer. And he was eating junk food. It wasn't good, healthy food. It was not veggies and lean proteins, guys. It was junk food. And he did it to prove a point that all that matters for weight loss is calories. That's all that matters. To get your weight to come down, you have to be in a calorie deficit. And he put himself in a horrible calorie deficit with junk food and lost weight. Okay, so can you get rid of your belly and still eat cheese and drink beer? Yes, but you've got to do the numbers and you've got to quantify it. So as long as you're in a reduced calorie state, whether you're working out or not is also irrelevant. Like you're saying you're working out 4 to 5 days per week. Hey, you can make that happen. That's an advantage. That's a bonus. So we could do the numbers. When I used to give nutrition talks all the time, my example was Snickers and beer. You're choosing cheese and beer. I would say you could lose weight on just Snickers and beer if that's how you want to make up your calories. Now, you will feel terrible and you will perform terrible, and your bathroom habits are probably out of this world. So if that's how you want to make up your calories, good luck. I don't know how long-term that is sustainable. How do I motivate myself to meal prep? I hate cooking. Here we are again, motivation question. What is your why? Why are you meal prepping? Why do you care? Why are you doing the nutrition? That's all you've got. And if maybe you're fortunate enough that you can order pre-prepped meals or something like that. But on another line of thinking, instead of just worrying about the motivation to do it, also the logistics. Like, have you dialed in a system that is the most efficient, laziest system possible so that you have to endure the least amount of it that you can, right? That maybe bridges the gap between your missing motivation. Would you consider programming more CrossFit named workouts for benchmarks? Simple ones with no Oli lifts, Helen, Karen, Fran, Jackie, etc. What products do you use in that fabulous beard? I use no products in my beard. This is just au natural. Would I consider more CrossFit named workouts? Yeah, I don't mind those benchmarks at all. Part of, I'm assuming this is directed towards like Fit Camp. So some of the things to consider when there is someone in my position that is programming for a large group of athletes. So I'm gonna look at, I can take a number of these actually. So we've done Fran several times. We've done Helen several times. But here's where Karen and Jackie become an issue. So Jackie, if I remember correctly, is 1,000-meter row, 50 thrusters, 30 pull-ups. So if I have 20 people in class, how do I program Jackie? Because I've only got 12 rowers. So I have an immediate bottleneck. And staggering for a 1K row means a lot of athletes are just sticking around doing nothing for several minutes while Heat 1 finishes their 1K row, right? I mean, that's 4 minutes. At a 2-minute pace, that's a 4-minute row. That's a long time for athletes to be standing around doing nothing, waiting for their heat to start. And I hate bottlenecks in coaching and programming. So I've been to a lot of gyms where they have bottlenecks constantly, and it drives me nuts to be at a facility and see athletes standing around like waiting their turn. It's one thing to have planned rest between sets for strength purposes. That's a very specific thing. But in this format, a lot of this comes down to logistics. You know, do I have enough wall balls? Do I have enough space? Can everybody operate at the same time? Yada, yada, yada. And a lot of the times, we are successful enough here at Go Headquarters, thankfully, to have pretty large group classes for Fit Camp, which I love, but it does create programming difficulties. So, you know, there are some that we can do. Like I said, we've done Fran, we've done Helen multiple times where there aren't those bottlenecks. So that's one of my limits there. But I love those things. There's no problem with those things. What to eat and still be able to have the energy to work out? Man, that's a long one. Jump on the RP diet or something like that. I mean, if you're eating less calories, let's say you're on a diet and you're trying to lose fat. So therefore you're in a reduced calorie state. You're burning more calories than you're eating. Calories are energy. So you technically don't have enough energy to work out. Where does that energy come from? Your stored body fat. That is the energy you're literally using to work out and survive when you're in a reduced calorie state. So that's why when you stay in a reduced calorie state for long enough, you end up losing weight, which is mostly body fat. 85% of your weight loss will be body fat by the end of the process. So, you know, this is where eating the right foods, not eating the beer and cheese, but eating the veggies and the lean proteins and the things that have micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals, those are the things that are going to give you the best performance bang for the buck when you're in a reduced calorie state. Do you recommend any supplements? How did you start off as a local small business owner? Yeah, supplements. Yes and no. So when you do your research on supplements, and this goes for things like multivitamins as well, a lot of it is redundant, and so you're kind of throwing your money away in many, many forms. Now, if I could get you to eat real food, let's say you're low on protein. Do I want you to have a protein shake by buying some SFH pure powder and get your protein that way? Or do I want you to eat some lean meat from an animal? I want you to eat the lean meat because that is our natural evolution, right? Our assimilation of that protein is going to be the highest that we can get. So me eating an egg is far more valuable than me drinking that protein powder, right? So we should use supplements to just fill in the gaps a little bit. Hence the word supplement. So we shouldn't be living off of these things. Now, that being said, the two most effective supplements, legal supplements that have been around are, number one is whey protein, and number two is creatine. So creatine, as far as the science goes, shows more positive result than anything else on the planet. Everything else is kind of a wash. So if you're getting enough protein in per day, you don't need to supplement with branch chain amino acids and L-glutamine, which is one of the branch chain amino acids found in our skeletal muscle. So you can end up just spending a lot of money and spinning your wheels. If you're eating right and training, that should do the majority of it. Okay. Other supplement, the other most used supplement is actually caffeine. So, drinking caffeine gets your body stimulated for performance. How did you start off as a local small business? We kind of went over that. I graduated University of Florida with an exercise science degree. My last semester was a full-time internship, which I actually did here in St. Augustine. And during my internship semester, I was able to build up a full-time clientele. So when that semester ended and I was done and graduated to schooling, I already had my small business as an independent contractor, and have just been able to add on to that slowly over the years. I never took a big gamble and made a big step in leaps and bounds necessarily, maybe other than opening this building, but I already knew that was good to go. Will your program involve video conferencing? When can we go paddleboarding? My program, will involve video conferencing. So I don't want to go into too much detail here, and that program won't even apply to everyone that I'm talking to right now, as far as how the survey went. So part of the survey was me collecting data on who's gonna be appropriate for the program. But yes, it will involve that in a small way. When can we go paddleboarding? I mean, anytime. Anytime. Today's beautiful out. Next up, you seem to stay in fantastic shape. Why, thank you. I feel okay sometimes. Would you say your workouts are less, same, or more intense than fit camp? How many hours a week do you work out? It depends on the day. So a lot of my workouts are the fit camp workouts. I mean, I definitely test a lot of those workouts. That's how I know how you guys feel. That's how I know the time domains to expect. I know how long it's going to take you guys, what it's going to feel like, where you're going to break down. That helps me as a coach to have tested those workouts, if that makes sense. But some of the other things are they're not more or less intense. That's all relative to what you're doing. So some of the things that I like to do that I wish I could program for fit camp are just the grunt workouts that I like to do, where I pile up a bunch of stuff on a sled and I go outside for an hour and I'm just hauling that sled around and I'm kind of making up shit as I go along. Those are some of my favorites. But again, back to a previous point, I don't have enough sleds for everyone to have their own sled, So if I have 16 people in class that night and I've only got, 6 or 7 sleds, that workout's just not on the table for me to program as much as I want to program it. So some of those things I feel are really, really hard, like mentally, because they last forever and you're out in the heat and you're just really uncomfortable out there. But that doesn't mean they're harder. I mean, if I hit any fit camp workout to my fullest intensity, it's going to kick my ass. So fit camp is all the intensity that I think I need. How many hours a week do you work out? I don't know. Somewhere between probably 8 and 10. And then if you count rock climbing type stuff, that probably adds another maybe 2 hours per week in small little intervals. Because sometimes I'm just doing like grip training that doesn't show up in daily life, really. What is your sign? I'm a Gemini, I think. June 19th. What is that? Am I still a Gemini? I think those things, I don't go by that stuff. Sorry. I make my own luck. I heard that those signs switched at some point, which I find is hilarious because some people have probably been living their entire lives based on their sign and then all of a sudden it switched, which I find hilarious. Sorry if that's you. How do you maintain daily and weekly motivation to maintain your high level of fitness? I'm just going to say I already answered that. What is the hardest thing about staying fit? Why are you a trainer? The hardest thing about staying fit is that it's perishable. It's a perishable skill. Dude, rent is due every day. So muscular atrophy and like cardiovascular fitness, those things start to deteriorate in 72 hours. 72 hours. So if you go 3 days without lifting something heavy, you are losing muscle mass. And that is a mind job, right? Is that I've got to lift something all the time. So that's what's hard about staying fit, is that it's constant. If you slip at all, now you can go in other directions, right? I could stop being a weightlifter right now and just take up running, and I would get a hell of a lot better at running, but I would be weak at the end of, 6 or 16 weeks of that. So perishable. Why are you a trainer? I love fitness. I've been in this my whole life, and that's it. I've been around it my whole life. I've loved it. I love challenging myself and being around others. I mean, I remember all these, I've talked about my brother a lot in this, right? So my brother and I would be playing in the yard, and he'd be going for a standing back tuck or some sort of round off or whatever moves we were doing. Just that kind of stuff. And like, he would go, then I would go, he would go. And it was like, who's going to nail it first? Who's going to do it better? How long can you do a handstand walk? Just all these little things. And so my whole life has been just this little one competitive moment after another. And so just kind of a natural evolution to get better at it. But the catalyst, I think, to become a trainer as a professional was I tore my quadricep in high school. I was a soccer player. Senior year, before the season even started, we were just at practice one day, and I, kicked the ball and friggin' tore my quad, and that sucked. I could barely walk, and I had to get rehabbed from the athletic trainer that was there. And this is the first guy that I ever experienced in my athletic career that really knew what he was doing on like an exercise physiology scale. He wasn't just a football coach who learned from his football coach and so on down the line, because that never went well. I just didn't know it at the time. But once I met this guy, and he took me through some leg workouts, and I couldn't walk the next day. I was so sore in the legs, and I was like, I've got to know what that guy knows. Whatever he learned, I need to go learn that. And that was the main catalyst for getting into this. As far as me going off to university and figuring out what I wanted to major in, that is the catalyst for that, getting injured. So that was good. And I'm glad I did. I'm pumped on it. It's been a fun career. It's an active lifestyle for sure. And again, it keeps me motivated. So it has all these little perks in it. And I get to hang out with cool people all day long in a fun atmosphere. And that's why I'm a trainer. Okay, that is it. So that was quite a few questions. I don't know how many of that was. 42 times 2, so 84 roughly. Wow, that went a lot longer than I expected. So sorry for such a long session. I doubt you guys sat through this in one take, if at all. And but thank you for everyone to everyone that's filled out a survey. That's awesome. This is extremely helpful for me moving forward to make some key decisions on the program that I'm trying to design right now. And I'll be filling you guys in on the future on what's coming next. And so thanks for all the help. Thanks for the questions today. Hopefully that answered a few things. And until next time.